Ever wondered why some students don't get marks in IELTS writing even when they write a lot of complex sentences? In this video, we will discuss what are the complex sentences and how to write them. So stay tuned. One of the biggest mistakes students make in IELTS writing is to try and show off and be overly ambitious with their grammar. This is because many students think that all of their sentences need to be complex. Well, actually they don't, and they do not understand what a complex sentence is. Trying to write overly complicated sentences leads to grammar mistakes, and this will lead to lost marks in many different areas. In this video, we are going to talk about how many complex sentences you actually need in each paragraph, what a complex sentence actually is, how to make complex sentences, and examples to help you understand and transfer this knowledge to your own writing. So what does the examiner expect from you? According to the marking scheme of IELTS, or if we look at the examiner's marking scheme, it states that in order to get a 6 band for grammar, we need to use a mix of simple and complex sentences. For band 7, it states that you have to use a variety of complex structures. This obviously means that we should use complex sentences in our writing, but it does not mean that we should try to make all of our sentences complex. All band 9 answers that I have seen use a mixture of both simple and complex sentences. The key is to know when to use them, and we will look at this next. But first, we need to understand what a complex sentence actually is. What is a complex sentence? The main problem here seems to be the word complex. Complex in this situation does not mean complicated, long, or impressive. This is a common misconception and leads students to write a very long and grammatically incorrect sentences that are very difficult to understand. Let's take an example which a student usually makes a mistake during writing. In the modern world, global warming is one of the most popular topics, causing many environmental difficulties and tough challenges arising from its serious consequences. So here, as you can see, I have already underlined what is the mistake. Most popular topics causing many environmental difficulties. In the real world, actually the global warming is a main environmental difficulty, not these main or most popular topics. This is a very typical sentence from an essay that is trying to be overly complex. This student has tried to put 4 simple ideas into one paragraph, and the result is an awkward and incoherent sentence. They have lost control of the grammar, and this affects its meaning, as you can see. When meaning is affected, it stops the reading, understanding what is being said, and that is really bad for your IELTS writing band scores. Complex sentences are not actually very complex. They are just simple, 2 or more simple sentences put together. Putting them together makes the essay more coherent and cohesive. Let's look at the first example again. In the sentence above, there were 4 simple ideas that we can put into simple sentences. So here are the 4 sentences. Global warming is a common topic these days. Second, global warming causes environmental problems. Third, there are tough challenges associated with the global warming. And the final one is, global warming has very serious consequences. Here is what I believe to be a complex sentence. One of the most common environmental issues is global warming, which causes many serious environmental problems. There are tough challenges associated with this issue, and its effects have very serious consequences. Remember, complex is just a label, it is not a description. So when should you use complex sentences? In general, we should use simple sentences when making main points, normally at the beginning of the paragraph. We should then use complex sentences when expanding the main point. For instance, when we have to give a supporting example, or when we have to explain our main point. Let's take an example question. There is a question about whether fast food or junk food should be taxed at a higher rate than normal food. So here's my example. Increasing taxes would raise prices and lower consumption. Fast food companies would pass on these taxes to consumers in the form of higher prices, and this would lead to people not being able to afford junk food. For instance, the cost of organic food has proven prohibitively expensive for most people. Despite this, people in many developed countries where the problem is most acute can afford price hikes and will continue to eat high-fat meals. As you can see, the first sentence is a topic sentence which makes the main point. It is therefore acceptable for this to be a simple sentence. The second sentence explains the main point and uses the word "and" to link two sentences together to make one special sentence. The third sentence gives an example and uses linking phrase "for instance." The final sentence make a concession which shows the limitation of the argument and is also a complex sentence linking more than one idea together. This paragraph has a mix of simple and complex sentences and therefore satisfies the marking criteria. Next, how do you make, or how do I make, a complex sentence? Remember that a complex sentence is just more than one simple sentence put together to make one sentence. We therefore need to learn and become confident using the various grammatical structures that allow us to do that. Next are a few ways how we can link ideas together in a sentence. To make a complex sentence, we normally should have two things: a dependent clause and an independent clause. A clause is actually a group of words with both a subject and a verb. What is a dependent clause? Dependent clause. An example of a dependent clause is dash because the weather was cold. This is a dependent clause because it has a subject and a verb, but it doesn't make any sense of on its own. Because the weather was cold. What? Why the weather was cold? There arises a question. To make sense, we need to add an independent clause. As the name suggests, an independent clause can make sense on its own. For example, I wore a warm coat. If we combine these two clauses, we get a complex sentence, that is, I wore a warm coat because the weather was cold. As you can see, complex sentences don't have to be complicated. Let's now look at other ways we can make complex sentences. Relative clauses. You can use relative clauses to give essential or extra information about a person, place, or thing. This makes our writing more fluent and more coherent. We do this by using relative pronouns like who, which, and that. For example, he is the kind of person who is always friendly. Other examples are air pollution can cause health problems. Air pollution is largely caused by motor vehicles. So these are the two different sentences. Let's make a single sentence by using relative clauses. Air pollution, which is mostly caused by motor vehicles, can cause health problems. So this is a complex sentence. Let's take a look at another example. There is evidence that some people are more likely to smoke, though these people have parents and friends who smoke. Let's make a complex sentence of these two simple sentences. There is evidence that people who have parents and friends that smoke are more likely to smoke. So this is also another kind of complex sentence. The second type is subordinate clauses. A subordinate clause can describe nouns and pronouns, describe verbs, describe adverbs and adjectives. or act as a subject or object of another clause. They are made by connecting an independent clause with the dependent clause with words like because, while, until, even though, although, when, and if. So these are by using these words you can make a subordinate clause, or in other words we can make a complex sentence. The third is conditional clauses, or we can say if clauses. They are used to express that the action in the main clause can only take place if a certain condition is met. These clauses are good for giving examples in IELTS writing task 2 or writing part 2. Let's take an example. If I had $1 million, I would quit my job. I will be really happy if I pass the IELTS test. As you can see, this complex sentence is made by if condition. Let's take another example. Increasing taxes would raise prices and lower consumption. Fast food companies would pass on these taxes to consumers in the form of higher prices, and this would lead to people not being able to afford junk food. If the cost of organic food proves prohibitively expensive for most people, they will simply not buy it. Despite this, people in many developed countries where the problem is most acute can afford price hikes and will continue to eat high-fat meals. They are also useful for talking about unreal situations or to speculate about results in the past or present. There are 4 different kinds of conditionals which I will outline after this slide. The first one is zero conditionals. These are used to talk about the information that is true or facts. We can use if or when to introduce the conditional. Let's take an example of it. Nowadays, when we travel long distance, we usually use air travel. So it's actually a truth, it's a fact. Whenever we have to travel for a long distance, like 1,000 kilometers, 2,000 or more kilometers or miles, anybody will prefer air travel instead of road or rail transport, because it would be much costlier as well as time consuming. The second one is first conditionals. First conditionals are used to talk about things in the present or future. For example, if the city's population continues to grow, we will need to build more infrastructures. So this is a thing, or this is a sentence about present or future. Next is second conditionals. Second conditionals are used to talk about things that are impossible, which are never going to happen. Let's take an example of it. If the sun didn't come up tomorrow, we wouldn't have any life on earth. So it's a fact, if there is no sun, there would be no life on earth. The next is third conditionals. It's also the last one. Third conditionals are used to speculate about past events. It is often used when we regret something or to imagine a past unreal situation. For example, the Second World War would have never happened if Germany had been given a fairer peace settlement in World War I. So this is the last conditional which we can use to describe about the past events. Compound sentences. Compound sentences consist of 2 independent clauses linked together with a conjunction such as and, for, or but. Its examples are: I really want to study, but I am too tired. She got to the test center early and she did really well in her IELTS test. Some students think these sentences are too simple to count as complex, but they are wrong. Next is a warning which you should avoid, the things you should avoid during your preparation of IELTS. The crucial thing is to understand and be able to use these grammar structures before your IELTS test. Some students memorize lots of structures and they try to insert them into their essays without giving much thought to how they work or if they are accurate. This will only lead to unnatural and incoherent sentences. Remember that your sentences need to also be error-free, so only use structures you are confident using. The key is to only use them appropriately, concentrate on answering the question, and if you know how to use these structures, they will flow naturally. Next is you should practice and learn. I hope this video has demonstrated that you can write your own ideas in a clear and simple way but still satisfy the marking criteria for complex sentences. When you are practicing IELTS writing questions, try to think of what you want to say in simple sentences and then think of how these might be linked to complex sentences. After enough practice, it will become a natural thing to do and your writing will really improve. If you want to increase your band score in IELTS, then please subscribe to our channel and also check our Facebook and Instagram page, which has been described below. Hit the like button and share these videos and other content on our Facebook and Instagram page with your friends and relatives. Thank you.